All right, guys. So right now we are here with none other than Ben Wong. Do you go by Benjamin Von Wong, Ben Wong? Like, how does that all work out?
Formally on the internet, I like to call myself Benjamin Von Wong or Von Wong, just because it sounds more formal. I feel like Ben Von Wong is just too many short three-letter, four-letter, and Benjamin Von Wong just sounds a little bit more formal. So yeah, Benjamin Von Wong.
Super cool. Well, again, I really appreciate you taking the time. This is for the Dope Shot Club, and let me just rifle off some of your statistics right now. You've been seen on Gizmodo, Today Show, ABC, Huffington Post, Mashable, Lifehacker. You work with Adobe, SmugMug, Fujifilm. Like, you have 138,000 fans on Facebook. You've got like 60,000 on YouTube, and you're just like a really awesome dude who like just takes his photography and does something amazing with it. I think it has to do with your mining background, which we'll get into in a second. But I feel like your creativity and just like your practicality when you're on set is like really sick, and what you've been able to create is just like totally its own unique style. So, dude, it's awesome to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Super excited. So tell me a little bit about how you went from being like this mining student, just like, normal life path, to now you're this crazy conceptual photographer. How does one switch so quickly from one to the other?
Yeah, I think in real life, the transition felt a lot slower and more gradual than it looked like on the internet. I quit my job as a mining engineer in 2012, and so that's about 4 years now. And since then, it's just been a pretty exciting journey, but it was never consistent. I started photography in November 2007. I graduated from engineering in 2008, and for 3.5 years, I had a full-time mining engineering gig in parallel to kind of learning all the ropes about photography, getting my Facebook page started, starting to do creative stuff online and all that. And then when I decided one morning that I didn't want to be an engineer for the rest of my life, I just basically dropped everything and just started traveling. And so I guess I had the foundation already built, where I already had like the bare minimum of equipment. So I wasn't buying gear. I was just going out with what I had, leveraging the social media that I had built over time and all these basic fundamentals that I had already done. And so I had somewhat of a runway where I didn't really even need to spend any money or do anything other than just, I guess, try to get out there and have a good time doing it. And so I think I was just very lucky when it comes down to being in the right place at the right time. I started doing behind the scene videos when not that many people were doing it. My videos were a little bit different. They were about travel, they were about adventure, they were about doing crazy things. And so I had my own space in the world where F-Stoppers was just getting started, and websites like, DIY Photography or SLR Lounge and all these guys were just craving content, and there weren't that many content creators out there. And so I just rode that wave, and since then it's just been a question of trying to scale up my projects, going from one project to the next and trying to make it bigger and more impressive every single time, because I don't know, I'm sure many people feel like this, but people are just so not impressed by anything else these days. You really got to take things to the next level every single time. And so that's been one of the biggest struggles.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, it's really interesting. I want to go back quickly to the idea of, you said it wasn't like you jumped cold feet into the photography thing. It wasn't like one day you were like, oh, no more of this mining stuff. I'm just doing strictly photography now. You said there was like a runway, and like you built that up over time, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, photography I think is one of the cheapest hobbies you can do, and I say that in a really, I mean, it's maybe $10,000 to get a really nice pro kit out there, and there are very few professions in the world, whether you want to start a restaurant or you want to I don't know, even be a filmmaker or anything. Like, it's so much harder in a whole bunch of different professions if you want to get started. Even just being like a painter or an artist, like all your supplies, they run out over time. I feel like photography is one of those things where you can, it costs a lot when you first get started, and it's kind of hard to figure out what to buy and which choices to make. But once you're set up and good to go, as long as you don't break your stuff, you're pretty good for a little while. I mean, you have at least 2 years before your thing starts to become obsolete, and you can even probably push it to 3 or 4. And so I started off in event photography, and that's how I paid off my kit. I mean, I did a lot of events, weddings, all that stuff, and I think it was a fairly successful business until I came to the conclusion one day that I didn't need to have 2 jobs, a job as an engineer and a job as a photographer. And so more or less dropped the entire event business side of things and just started doing creative stuff. And over time, when I first quit my job, I just wanted to focus on doing creative things, things that I enjoyed, kind of benefit from my freedom. And somehow along the way, the whole idea of becoming a social influencer and being able to collect sponsors that would help provide new equipment for me to create more content and to appeal to more fans just kind of became self-sustaining in a way, so that I didn't need to worry so much about getting lots of paid jobs, because the most expensive part of my journey, which was usually gear, would be taken care of, and then the travel I would basically pay off by teaching. And so I would teach workshops, and that would get me a free travel ticket with a little bit of spare pocket change that I could use to do some crazy project depending on whichever country I was in, and just slowly build up from there. And so I think there are a lot of people also kind of leveraging that business model these days, specifically because social media empowers that. If anything, I think the education market has just exploded online, because anyone can teach. You don't even need to be that great.
I would say going from this idea of you were doing events and then like you slowly scaled it up, and now you just it sounds like you're mostly focusing on just creating like really viral content, because that exposure is like super important to you, it sounds like, because that's what kind of ends up driving traffic later on down the road to like your classes and workshops, right?
Yeah, so what I've found over time is that if I just focused on creating viral pieces of content and people found me through these viral pieces of content, then they would inevitably hire me to do precisely what they saw on the internet, which means they don't come to me and because they want a photographer. They come to me because they specifically want what I do. And as a creative, I find that you have a lot more creative leeway when it comes to that type of interaction. And so for me, it's been a great process to slowly build up a name and a reputation, to have people actually come up to me and then propose a project and say, what would you like to do? This is our problem that we want to solve. How would you solve it? And then just kind of attack it that way. The focus lately has shifted a little bit. So I recently got my first global campaign, which
congratulations, that's awesome.
Yeah, which was quite awesome, because not only was it a creative project, it also put a little bit of money into the bank, which gave me the freedom and the flexibility to start rethinking and reconsidering my options in life. And I've been recently trying to focus on figuring out how I can create viral content that helps make the world a better place.
Yes, exactly.
In my latest projects, you'll see that a lot of that has kind of manifested in the shape and form of humanitarian or environmental projects. And the goal, once again, is to prove that saving the environment is cool, or it can be cool, and it can be viral, and it can attract a lot of eyeballs and get a lot of support, which, if done correctly, my hope is that in the next couple years, if I can prove that this is a functional way to get engagement, that it will become a way for companies to want to sort of start getting involved more in the whole environmental movement, and hopefully get hired in the process. And so if I can not only make saving the environment cool, but get paid to do it and get paid well, then it becomes something that other people can aspire towards. And if anything, it creates an entire new job market. And I think that's something that I would really like to play around with.
That's awesome. That's really cool. You're like an alchemist combining two separate forms that are both like two amazing things and putting them together and creating something really awesome out of it. I think that's really like really, really sick. Like specifically, you have I think it was the A7R2 review, and you talked about 42 megapixels of garbage. That was a really, really cool article. I personally, I remember seeing that before it was even like, I knew that it was you. Like, I just remember seeing that floating through like Facebook or the social media or whatever, and being like, wow, this is a really like thoughtful article that you kind of bring people in, because people are so attracted to gear, and they're super attracted to these specific like, oh, I have to have like this camera and whatever. But like you're saying, it becomes obsolete in 2, 3, 4 years. And it's like this constant cycle, but then you use it to shine the light on the problem that it's kind of creating, which is it's super meta and like very cool of you. So props on that.
Yeah, I don't think the Sony guys really appreciated that, unfortunately.
That's what's so cool about it. That's what's so important about it. You're not like falling in line with everyone else. You're like stepping beyond those boundaries and pushing things in your own way, which is really cool.
Yeah, that was the hope. Well, we'll see. I think I think I didn't make that many friends on the corporate side from that article, even though it was a positive review. But I feel like the world is shifting, right? The way we advertise nowadays isn't just about trying to shove a product in people's faces. It's about much more than that. It's about the spirit and the why behind it. And so, my hope is that there's going to be a turnaround in the next couple years, and where people just really start focusing on really just trying to make the world a better place. Yes, it's about providing great gear at a good cost and all that. And I definitely think that, we live in a capitalist society, and so there's nothing, you can't really change that. And so I think in order to, I guess, save the planet, if you will, there needs to be some form of balance between how we currently run things, and realizing that people are willing to pay more if it's for a better cause. Just like people are willing to pay more for a fair trade coffee over, pay that extra dollar just for fair trade as opposed to something that isn't. And so I'm hoping to kind of showcase that through an artistic process. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch of different initiatives out there. And really, I'm just one guy, but I can just try my best to do whatever it is that is on my end.
That is so cool. Yeah, it's like sort of Tai Chi, like using the form of the energy. You're taking capitalism and you're using it as a platform rather than a blockade to like promote your ideas and like help change the world, which is like so sick.
Yeah, we'll see if it works. It's an experiment right now. So worst case scenario, I run out of money and I go back to just doing normal corporate things, and that'll be that. But best case scenario, it all works out, and that would be great.
It seems to be working out so far. You just spent 6 weeks out in Europe, you were saying. So shoot, sounds like it's working. So dope. Let's see. I had a quote from an article that I wanted to bring up. I was reading, I think it was on a Petapixel interview that you did.
Okay.
You basically said here, you said, to change the world for the better to the best of my ability. And I thought that was like a really, really powerful statement. And if you wanted to go more into that, how like you take that as a photographer and as a creative and like turn that into how you manifest that. Like we have the 42 megapixels of garbage, but you've also got the one about the sharks that you just posted, the reef. That one was really cool.
I wish I was born with greater abilities than just the ability to take pretty photographs. But unfortunately, that's all I can do. And so I think so much about what I could just spend my entire life kind of going like, I wish that I had X, Y, or Z, which I don't. Or I can just say, all right, well, I'm just going to try to do the best with what I have. And so there's really like two different options in how you live your life. And so for me, it makes sense to try to make the world a better place. And although I'm not too sure how to do that, I'm always striving for the maximum amount of impact that I can do within my field. And so it's a learning process. It's about trying to meet people that empower you and surround yourselves with other inspirational individuals, and just kind of going through this thought process. And I don't know if it's all going to work out. I mean, you never really do. But that journey and that story of just trying to affect people in a positive way and trying to make the world a better place, I think is one that's just worth pursuing. And without focusing too much on the end result, because so much of it is about the process. I mean, the end result is one thing that you can brag about. It's great to show to people, to inspire them and everything. But the process of getting there is a story in itself too. And when you look at the stories or the biographies of all these great individuals on how they came to be who they are, you'll notice that it's never a straight path. But it's their journey and the struggles that come within that make it inspiring. And so I think for me, as just a regular average dude who had an engineering job and quit to become a photographer, it's kind of a fairly relatable story to the middle class that, you can just take whatever you have, whatever circumstances you're in, and just kind of turn it around if you want to. And hopefully the idea is that in a best case scenario, I influence millions, hundreds of millions, change the world. But
that would be incredible.
That would be great. But if not, and I've just impacted a couple hundred or a couple thousand, or even just, the people that are close to me, that's not a bad thing either. And so it's really about pursuing that to the maximum effect. And so we can only try our best. I mean, that's, I think, really all we can hope for. So
that's so cool. I feel like this is like transcending like a typical photography interview and becoming like just life knowledge, pure life knowledge from Ben Wong.
It is a little bit of a life interview, isn't it?
Ben says so, you know.
Yeah.
So rad, so rad. I really dig it. I dig it. I feel like that's kind of the essence of creativity is like understanding where the barriers are and understanding where you are in relation to everything around you and taking what you've got and making it the best that it possibly can be, you know? Say you're on a shoot or you're on set and something is going wrong or you need to get a certain type of shot, but you don't have the perfect gear. Like being able to like create what you want to create, like take your vision and make it real from what you've got around you is like the true heart of it. So that's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've had shoots that were total failures that I tried to make into, at the very least, an exciting blog post or a video to say like, all right, well, I don't really have much to say because I don't like the photos, but you know, the process of how it was created is actually quite interesting. Let me share it with you.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like so much can be learned through failure. And often society views failure, like our society, like Western society or whatever, views failure as like something that's like really bad for you. You got an F on your report card and it's like so bad. But like other traditions are able to like, they're able to understand that failure is something that actually leads to further growth. And so like every time you shoot, it's a process of like learning and growing. So it's so cool.
Yeah, I think you know, with social media, we all try very hard to be perfect in some way, shape, or form, and there's definitely a lot of curation that goes on behind it. But I think there's also a way to curate things and be relatable and be honest at the same time. And I try to strike a balance between all of that because it is true that, you know, if you do things really haphazardly and you come off as irresponsible and unprofessional, that could actually hurt your chances of getting hired from a professional standpoint. But I think there's a way to stay connected with people and share the intimate moments of fears and doubts while still pulling something off. And then suddenly your story has kind of transcended the whole, like, I just want to look good, but actually, oh, well, I succeeded, but man, that road to success was a huge pain in the ass kind of a thing. I think things need to be framed in that way, to be genuinely relatable.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the curation that happens behind the scene is like something that's really interesting. Everyone's always trying to put out their best self, where not like Snapchat and Beam are able to they're able to make you so much more relatable. Like you're saying, you feel so much more organic when you watch someone's Snapchats. You feel like you're there with them on the shoot, and you're just hanging out. You feel like you're there. Whereas Facebook is like, here's this incredible photo of me. Like here's the finished product. So having those different networks and the different modalities to access behind the scenes is like it's kind of creating a transparency in the world of not just photography and filmmaking, but just the world in general, which is really cool.
Yeah. Actually, I have a question for you. Since you found me on Snapchat, I had a debate with one of my friends recently about whether it was better to post snaps every day or to only post when you had something interesting to share. And the conclusion that I came to is that it was better to post less and have interesting content every time you posted, as opposed to sharing snaps all the day, all the time, just to be part of someone's daily routine. And I couldn't quite. I was just curious to know from your perspective, since you found me on Snapchat, what you would have preferred.
I feel like you hit it like spot on with the two different styles. If say someone like Ty Lopez that I follow, he snaps every 5 minutes. It's like a constant barrage of snaps. Like him and DJ Khaled is just like I could open it up right now and there'll be 30 new snaps from the time we started talking, which I think is cool because you were like on the journey with them. And every time that they snap, they appear on the top of the feed, meaning they get more views. But like you're saying, there's other people like Casey Neistat or Jerome Jar. They post on Snapchat every once in a while. And when they pop up, it's a lot more exciting. It's like, oh my gosh, they finally posted. Like, let's see what they're actually doing. Because you know they're working on those things. So, I don't know. I feel like I probably have more respect if the person is once in a while and it's like really incredibly awesome compared to if the person is all the time. But you really come to know someone if they snap all the time. So there's the pros and the cons of each. I can see it from both perspectives.
Yeah, I think maybe it works better if you're a super famous celebrity to post all the time because people actually want to know what you do and who you are. But if you're kind of a mid-level celebrity or a low-level celebrity, like I put myself in the low-level celebrity side of things, you know, it's like, I don't know, it just seems a little bit too much. It's like, you don't really need to see me in my bedroom doing absolutely nothing.
No, very true, very true. But the cool thing is that at any time you could make like the I think the power of Snapchat is the strength of its creativity and the imagination that it can bring. Like guys like M. Garber or Sean Duras when they're on Snapchat and they create these amazing drawings. It's just like this is so cool. It could be like a photo of his dog that everyone else would be like, oh, he's whatever, not very interesting. Like next, but you see, Sean Durst took a photo of his dog, and he made it look like the Super Mario character or something. You know, that is like that's wow. And so if you're able to like draw those ideas to you all the time, I think Snapchat can be a very like powerful medium.
Yeah, that requires a talent of drawing, which I do not possess.
No,
I don't even have the talent of emoji. I can't even figure out how to make emojis exciting. I think that's a skill in itself.
I think they're doing some really cool stuff, and I think one of the powerful things about Snapchat is it's very active. Whereas when you're watching someone's story on Snapchat, you're like watching it. Whereas if you're on Facebook, you could just be like blah 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 blah. You know, it's a lot more engaged people, which is interesting. So I wanted to jump into like a couple of the questions, and then we can let you go. These were questions that people in the Dope Shot Club asked. The first one comes from Kyle Baker. He says, "What piece of advice would you give yourself when you just started out that you would know now?"
When I first started out, I think that's a hard question to answer because I don't know when I officially first started out. I mean, I've always created photos for myself. I've never really created it for others. And even when I was pursuing the business aspect of things, it was all funded and fueled by the desire for personal growth. And so, you know, I think my process in how I've grown over time has been a very honest and straightforward one. Everything I am today, whether it's successes or failures along the way, have all led to who I am. And so there isn't a point in time, at least in my photography, that I really felt like I did some major missteps or things that I should have, where I really pivoted in the wrong direction or that I could have really made a big impact. So, I mean, you know, going back in time and saying, oh, you should have started behind the scene videos earlier, or you should have done more of them faster, or you should have invested more straight away. Like all these are kind of like, I mean, it was what it was on the time it was. So what's the point? But I think if I was talking to myself and I was starting photography now on what I would do differently, I think that might be a significantly more pertinent question because the world that I became successful in 4 or 5 years ago or built my reputation on doesn't exist anymore today. The world's changed. And so for all of those who are trying to make a name for themselves now, who are trying to stand out and create content, I would definitely try not to listen too much to people who made it a long time ago, because our advice doesn't apply that much anymore. I mean, the same things like hard work and, you know, gotta stay honest and push yourself and do personal work and, you know, get technically good at what you want to do and all this stuff, like all those base concepts are the same. But in terms of networking, in terms of platforms to use, in terms of how you use social and how you reach clients and how you connect with people, all this stuff is changing all the time. And so look at the people who are successful today, the new successes, the homegrown successes, and see what they're doing and why is it working for them, and try to study how they're communicating with the world and why it works, and figure out which aspects of those apply to yourself. And so I think that might be a more appropriate question or answer. Yeah.
Wow, that's some serious knowledge right there. That was really awesome. Like being able to go out there and like be very straightforward and honest about what is working in today's society and model that for your own brand or business or company or whatever as a photographer or just as a person is like so powerful. To your question, I feel like being able to go out there and take a straightforward look at what is working in today's society as far as marketing, branding, you know, living as a photographer, as a creative person, and being able to successfully model that is like a very strong, like great advice to give yourself for sure. Dope. Next question.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So Tad wants to know what your most difficult shoot was, because you've done underwater shooting fishermen, you've done underwater with sharks and light beams, you've done like super crazy fire and all this stuff. Like, what has been your most difficult shoot so far for you personally?
I think my most difficult shoot just happened in Poland. We shot in an underwater quarry in 14 degrees Celsius waters, so that's cold. We had 3 to 5 meter visibility with heavy layers of sediment on the ground, which meant super murky waters. So super murky waters, freezing water. I'm not that great of a diver. On top of that, we had a model who was just shivering in cold, and we had this set, and the excavator is the object that I need to frame, but you can't move the excavator. And so you're just there trying to orient yourself around this unmovable structure. And I have this little coral reef that I bought on Amazon, which is kind of the single mobile object that kind of helps define the story, because it was a project to protect the coral reefs. And so you're trying to move this coral reef that I put on a tripod that I'm trying to line up compositionally while floating around, trying not to kick up sediment, when we have a model that's, freezing and struggling to kind of take off her mask and hold her breath and get into position. And you can't communicate, you can't talk. Everyone's freaking cold. And you know that the longer the shoot goes on, the colder the model gets, the less visibility you have. And it's just this massive time bomb. And once you go up to the surface and you don't have the shot, you know that you might be able to go back down one more time. And it's just like everyone's just waiting. All the dive crews are kind of, they're super hot because they're in a dry suit, and I'm in a wetsuit, so I'm freezing. And I was like so cold. Like I was cold to the point where I couldn't even feel the trigger on the underwater housing. And so I mean, I think that was definitely one of my hardest shoots, just because of how many variables there were and how little control I had over anything. And so it's funny because nothing that I really said has anything to do with photography. It wasn't so much about the camera that was a problem, or the composition or the lighting or anything. I mean, they were all factors, but those weren't what made it difficult. But yeah, that was a tough shoot. And I was, after 5 days of diving, and we got 3 shots. We barely got scraped together a third shot after 5 days of diving. And I just, I don't like cold water, and now I really don't like cold water. Yeah, I think that was probably one of my hardest shoots. But I'm hoping to get the project out in about a month or something, month or two. So yeah.
Wow. Is that work like for a client that you're doing?
No, this is a personal project. So as part of my whole endeavor to create environmentally cool projects, this was one of the brilliant ideas I had, to go strap a model in freezing water and find an underwater excavator in Poland. I have not figured out exactly how to promote this yet and who to promote it with, nor have I found the exact cause to support, because I think every project needs to have a call to action. And so this is still a work in progress. But
sounds really incredible though. Like just the it's crazy to me. Like sometimes I'm scared, like going out and shooting with a client, like just at sunset, and you're like underwater and it's like freezing cold, and you're like, what? It definitely helps put like my sort of shoots in perspective when you're doing all this crazy stuff. I'm like, I guess I could chill out,
Well, clients are always intimidating no matter what. I think you just go into this and you're like, all right, I can't blow this. You really got the pressure. And for me, the pressure is usually in making sure and hoping that the team is happy. And so even when there's no client, the pressure on me is like, all right, am I really making everyone waste their time today, or am I going to actually get something out of this freaking shoot? And so the pressure kind of falls on that side of things. But I don't think the pressure ever leaves, though. I mean, I feel like there's just as much pressure on the smaller shoots as the bigger ones. It's pretty consistent. The only shoots that I have zero pressure on are the ones that I don't have to post anything about. I feel like anytime I need to make anytime I have to post something socially, then I feel the responsibility of making sure that the project was worth everyone's time and they're getting their time's worth, really.
100%. Yeah. Wow. That's cool. That's an interesting way of looking at it. All right, cool. And then the final question is going to be from, let's see. It's from Adam Fuller, and he asks, who are your heroes?
My heroes. So I really look up to people like Elon Musk, who changed the world, like literally take something and make it awesome and try to change the world and dream big. And as far as photography heroes go, I can't really say that I follow that much the work of what other creatives do. One of my recent inspirations, as far as environmental photographers go, is a guy called Nick Brandt. He created these amazing panoramics shot on film in the middle of Africa, where he printed his own work of animals like elephants and rhinos and lions.
I've seen this. Yeah, yeah, it's incredible.
Put them in environments where they used to be, and it's just this stunning series that you can just imagine how much work went into the whole thing. And so for me, I hope that I reach the point where I'm able to create work that can tell its own story and can really impact people in a single frame. Because right now, I feel like my stories are really only completed with either the addition of text or a video or a blog post to explain what they're doing. And so I would love to be able to create work that can convey a message on its own one of these days. And I haven't figured it out yet, but maybe sooner rather than later, hopefully.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point, though, is that a very strong piece of work is able to convey itself entirely like as its own piece. It doesn't need outside symbols to bring up the issue that it's trying to like put forth. It's just that's it.
Right. And so I don't think my work's at that level yet. So I'm trying to work towards that.
Well, I think you're doing pretty well so far, Ben. So I wouldn't put yourself down too much.
Well, we always need to push ourselves to grow further. So there's no point. I don't think there's much point in being satisfied with where we are.
Well, I feel like you have to, in life, there's kind of a balance you have to have of like leaning forward and like pushing yourself and progressing, but also being content with what you've created and being happy in yourself. You can't be the guy that's like, I just have to get more and do more.
Well, the good thing about social media is there's never any shortage of compliments. And so if I judged my own self-worth by the number of likes or comments I got, my ego would probably explode the entire city. But and so I think it's good for me to stay hungry, and then other people can give me the validation, and then I get the balance that way.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think it's interesting that most of your heroes, it sounds like, are not photography related, but like photography is just the medium that you express your inspiration from Elon Musk or these other guys.
Well, the thing is, I never wanted to be a photographer. I never particularly liked photography. It just happened to be the one thing that I was half decent at. And so now I'm a photographer. It was just like by default.
Which I think is really powerful because you're able to not see the medium as like, the medium doesn't get lost as the message.
Right. Yeah. So I think, and especially in today's world where, the different mediums are intersecting and overlapping, when do I stop becoming a photographer and start being an entertainer? Or when do I stop being an entertainer and start being a videographer? It's like, or a videographer versus a blogger or an influencer or a speaker. Like all of these things are just so intricately intertwined today, in that I feel like you can't just be one thing anymore. Not if you want to keep up with the way and the speed at which society is changing. So
yeah, you can't live behind a moniker. You have to live behind a message, like you were saying.
Right. So I'm still figuring it out every day. Like it's a work in process. Like I have these little existential crises every 6 months or something, and I just kind of wonder what the hell I'm doing. So
I think that's required for living a happy life.
Yeah, I think everyone goes through that, especially creatives, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's probably a good thing.
Yeah, I feel like in every creative process, like and project, there's always the point you reach where it's just like, this is the worst thing I've ever been through, and like I never want to see this or touch this or work on this again. And then you like finish it, and you're like, actually, it's pretty good. Well, cool. We'll leave it at that. Do you have any final, like, if you had the one big summary takeaway that you want to leave everyone with, like Ben Wong, what'd you say?
I think that. I think that everyone has the power to make a positive difference in the world. They just need to set their mind to it. And, it's a very interesting problem to have when you're unable to figure out how much change is worth it. Is it worth it if you just change one person's life But then what happens if you've changed that one person's life? Then are you done? Do you stop, or do you have to keep going? And then what if you've impacted 10? Then is it 100 and 1,000? But if you start thinking about how what you do can make the world a better place, you set yourself down a path of infinite possibilities, because you don't just work for yourself anymore. You work for everyone, and I think that's one of the things that will keep you going when things, shit hits the fan and things start going poorly. You can look back at the positive things that you've done that have really impacted others, because it's not just about building yourself up, but building up the people around you, and those stories and those messages that you put out there are the ones that are really going to be your strongest friends and allies when things don't go well.
That is awesome. That's so good. I think you nailed it. Mic drop. Psh. No, but seriously, it's totally true.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, cool, man. Where can people find you? You're on Snapchat, Instagram, all that stuff. Do you want to rifle off your stats? And then is there anything that you want to anybody you want to thank along your journey? Any sponsors you want to talk about? You want to talk about your photography stuff? I want to, let the people know about where they can get at Ben.
Yeah, I mean, I always thank everyone at the end of every single project. So I have a blog where I basically detail all of my shoots. So blog.vonwong.com. And then a YouTube channel with over 100 behind the scene videos on how I did all this stuff. So that's youtube.com/VonWong. Instagram's Von Wong. Twitter's The Von Wong, because Von Wong was taken. I think Facebook, you can find me on Von Wong too. So Snapchat's Von Wong. I'm really not very original. So yeah, you can find me on anything Von Wong, basically. If I'm on it, it's there. And yeah, as far as thanking people, I mean, I think the one people I don't tend to thank very much that probably need the most thanks are my parents, because they're the ones that have always... oh yeah, I probably need to send a message. My parents are floating around in China right now on some business trip. But yeah, I should definitely thank my family for supporting me, even though they kind of still wonder what I'm doing with my life. They still support me. Probably not always in words, because they're demanding Asian parents, but they support me in actions, which is what's most important. So yeah.
And then I guess I'll leave. There's a quote on your Facebook page. I was looking at your info on your Facebook About Me page, and there's a dope quote from you, and it says, "Sounds impossible. Let's do it."
Yeah.
So I'll leave you guys with that. Ben, thanks again for hopping on and chatting with us today.
All right, awesome, man. High five.
Woo, high five.